Okay, well, I love what you just said about the heart because uh, I'm going to talk about entering the promised land. And in the Old Testament, the promised land, I believe, is in the heart. In the New Testament, the promised land is the kingdom of God, both located within. And so I'm going to talk about the Exodus. Let me see. I might. Uh, Hang on. I just lost everybody. Okay. I'm going to talk about the promised land. In the story of Exodus, it is the story of Pharaoh had the Israelites held captive, and Moses said, "Let my people go," kept begging him to set everybody free. And Pharaoh kept saying, "No, no, no." And then there were seven plagues. And then finally, Pharaoh said, "Okay, come on, get out of here already." And so then people were set free. And what I believe about this metaphysically is that Pharaoh represents our ego. Pharaoh is our ego. And our ego then has ourself, the Israelites represent us, individuals. And Moses represents a higher level of consciousness, a spiritual level of consciousness. And so think of it this way. So spiritually, we are asked, okay, ego, come on, set me free. All these intentions that you're talking about, all these prayers, all the ask, all the receives that you're focusing on are really all about asking to be set free. Now, what do we need to be set free from? And so I say that we are all enslaved with we are all enslaved with our thoughts, with our beliefs, with our judgments. We are enslaved with our habits, our patterns, all the things that we have been uh, programmed with. We went through a stage of learning. And in that stage of learning, we were all taught, here's our family belief systems, here is our culture beliefs, here's our human ways. And the learning was all about teaching us to survive. It's not bad. We all have to go through that stage as a human. And then when we come to a phase where we're opening our heart, where we're saying, at a point in our lives, we say, is this all there is? What am I meant to do? What is my purpose? We all may have had some kind of spiritual awakening that we step on that path, and we have different questions that we can ask ourselves. And so this is what we're talking about. How do we get to the promised land? So phase one, the spiritual part of it said, set me free of all my, and I hear that your requests today that you put out there are really about asking your ego to set you free, to give you the vision of life as miracles, the vision of life as blessings, as acts of kindness, of considerations, of enlightening ideas. And so, one of the things that we have to do, phase two, so the ego has set us free. Now, phase two of this, of the Exodus story, what did they do? The Israelites wandered around in the desert for 40 years. Now, you know what? There was a lot of complaining going on there because they were like, oh my gosh, what are we lost? When are we ever going to get there? Moses, did you take us out here to die? Because they were just wandering around. Now, they had manna every single day, but it didn't last. They tried to save the manna, but it became hard as a rock. It was like a substance that grew on a plant for real. And it only lasted 24 hours, sort of like daylilies, they only last 24 hours. And so they were saying, Moses, at least when we were slaves, we knew what to do. We got fed. We had a life. And so the 40 years in the desert, wandering around, is a dry period. Now, I want to relate this all to today. Today, we are in the birth canal, the birth portal, the rebirth portal of life. We've all heard that there's a shift coming, right? There's a shift going to happen. We've been hearing that for 40, 50 years. The shift is happening. And what's that shift going to look like? Do you think we're going to go to bed Saturday night and wake up Sunday and there's a whole new world? Doesn't happen that way. We have to go through a process. I believe if we look back at COVID, COVID kind of put the whole world in neutral. And that lasted a couple years in neutral, that we all had to stop what we were doing. Everybody around the world, they had to stop what they were doing. They had to think about how they were going to recreate themselves. How were they going to survive? The things that they did on a normal basis, the routines, the habits, getting up, going to school, going to work, going to lunch, coming home, eating, doing whatever our natural habits were, had to stop. We had to rethink and recalculate our lives. That started the shift from happening in a different way, because then we were in a neutral stage. And now when life came back after COVID, we had to now reimagine our lives. Now that I work at home, do I ever want to go back to the office? Now that I don't drive a car for a while, do I really need it? How much do I use it? We ask ourselves these questions about human existence. And I would also guess that all of our things that block our awareness to love came up during the COVID part, because we were in a whole different situation. We couldn't ignore a lot of things. And if you lived in a house, well, if you lived alone, you couldn't have distractions, as many distractions. You couldn't get out and run around and get away from yourself. If you live with somebody, you had a whole new sense of your boundaries, your reality, and you had to make your shifts there. And so I was thinking that uh, as we come into this portal of rebirth, there's an old saying that says, we're in a hallway and all the opportunities, all the doors lock, and the new door hasn't opened yet. Like if you're between jobs, between marriages, between children, you say, oh, it could be hell in the hallway. And that could be the birth portal. So something had to happen when birth happens. So what has happened is the world in which we knew it, I'm going to say it in the past, the world in which we knew it is still crumbling. They say we should be very blessed to be in the generation that has wisdom to know that a future new earth is going to be born, and to know that we can watch the old world crumble. The key is we have to stay in our heart. We have to enter this promised land, enter the kingdom of God. We have to enter our hearts. We have to live in our hearts more than ever. We are a drop of water in the ocean. We are an individual drop, but we're still part of the whole. And that individual drop that we are, we have to connect with that. And we have to know that love is our source. God is love, and love is our source. So we need to focus on our source, connect with that energy, allow that energy to flow through us, and set our intention. Imagine the new world. What is that new world going to be like? It hasn't formed yet. In the world and the earth in which we live, we know they did report a couple weeks ago there were 2 earthquakes in Venezuela. Well, somebody sent me a map that in a circle around Venezuela, there were actually 6 earthquakes that happened in a circle. We know that there is movement inside the earth, actual movement. One of the predictions of a new world going to form is the earth is going to shift its axis. Well, there is something happening in the earth. There are volcanoes that have been inactive that are now active. There are lands that were unseen that are going to be seen. We also know there's a lot of change in the heavens. In the last year, there have been formations of the planets that have never happened for 22,000 years. There have been formations of the planets that never happened ever before. So they don't know what's really going to happen. So the heavens are shifting, under the earth is shifting. We also know that in the world there are still many floods and fires and destruction happening on earth. We know that right now there are 2 wars happening in 4 different countries. We also know that in the United States, the government and the systems that we felt familiar with, that we trusted, that kept us feeling safe, are now being disintegrated and reshifted, readjusted. So all of that is happening around us in our human experience. And that can be very frightening. The key is we have to enter this promised land. We have to live from our heart. We have to know that somehow, beyond our comprehension, the old is being readjusted and destroyed, so the new can be born. When a caterpillar enters a cocoon, they don't all of a sudden grow wings and become a butterfly. No, they melt down. This is the meltdown state. And it's so important that we stop looking behind and around us and look within. I think there was some affirmation that said, let our heart be our guide, embrace the new. And so we have to realize we are in this birthing portal, and everything is in divine order. We have no clue what that means, except we have to trust that statement. All is in divine order. Nothing is out of control. I read recently that the Catholic Church believes in the omnipresence of God, except now omnipresence is everywhere, equally present, except for sinners. They're not in the omnipresence of God. Now, that just doesn't make sense. And so we have to realize that there is an omnipresence of God in everyone. It's like the oneness, the ocean. We're each a drop in that ocean. And so what's happening outside in the heavens, on the earth, under the earth, is going to have an effect on us, but we have to trust that that effect is for positive results. It's part of the meltdown. It's part of the reformation that's happening. And we are in the rebirthing canal. And so in this portal or canal, I see it like a tube. When a female's water breaks, it's like, okay, time for birth. And the baby has to go through an uncomfortable, squeezed tightly canal in order to come out and be birthed into a new world. So when you get that image, and maybe we all have memories of that, so that it gets scary. So what is it that we can do as we are in this canal to honor where we are? Part of our intention is, what do we believe that the next new earth is going to be about? What do we believe it's going to look like? Is it going to look like less duality and more transformative kindness. Like in this 3D world, there's duality we live in. We know there's black and there's white and there's good and there's bad. Most of us taught to place judgment on the bad and to push away or push ourselves away from the bad, away from the fear. Most of us were really not taught embrace the loving. We were taught to sort of just get rid of the fear. I just read in our group this week on the Course of Love, it talks about wholeheartedness and it talks about the Christ consciousness. And it says, when we judge, we take ourselves out of the Christ consciousness and into the human consciousness. So, one of the things that we can do to help ourselves through this canal of birthing excuse me, is to get beyond judging. Now, that's very challenging because we judge, we don't even know we're judging because it's part of our human nature. It's incorporated in it. It's the part that we have been taught. And so we have to just look at that. Things that we may judge very harshly. So let's let that go. One of the other things we can do, well, we have to stay awake. We have to stay alert. We have to get in our heart. We have to realize love is coming into me all the time. I'm always plugged in, and I can always ask, how do I see this situation? How can I release this situation that came in my life? How can I be more at peace? Each one of us can ask that, and each one of us will get an answer to that. Ask, receiving, pray, believing. And so ask, how can I be more peaceful? How can I not have so many dramas in my life that distract me? So we have to imagine this new world, imagine ourselves living in a world of peace. When somebody who is fearful of the changes in the world starts up a conversation that wants to engage you and your ego in how horrible it is, how awful it is, how frightening it is, we say, how can I comfort them? Can I have words of comfort to offer them instead of entering to a judgmental conversation? And entering into a conversation that's going to trigger the fear in me. How can I talk from my faith? How can I talk from love? And so, not watching the news. Now, some people may say, oh, if I don't have the news, I don't know what's going on. If I don't know what's going on, it'll be unsafe. And that's where we know we live in the promised land. We live in the kingdom of heaven. We know there's peace when we are aligned with our heart. When we have coherence in our heart and mind, there is peace. So how can I live in that place of peace? Also, I just watched this TV show called, what is it called? Swedish Death Wish. Swedish Death Cleaning. Swedish Death Cleaning. And so some people from Sweden go to people's houses and they clean as if you died. If you die, and somebody comes into your house, what are they going to do with all your stuff? And so what they do is help people pare down their stuff, things that are of memory, things that are important heirlooms. They figure out how to give it a place of honor, not just living amongst your junk. And so that's another thing that, that's something we may not think about. But look at our houses. Do we find a flow? Do we have serenity? Do we have peace when we go in our house? Or are we overwhelmed with that? Because we share all of the energy when our space is too crowded. Love energy can't flow. And if we look at something and say, oh, I should, that should, no shoulding, pass it on, get rid of it. I just had, there's a site called Free Rehoboth, I think it's called. And so you put things on there. I just got rid of a box spring and a mattress. I put it on my porch. I put it Free Rehoboth, and you list it as gifting. I'm gifting a mattress. I'm gifting a frame, a bed frame. And so someone whose neighbor just lost everything in a fire said, oh, I could take that. And so they gave it for free. They came and picked it up, and it was a wonderful gift that they got. And so it was no use to me. It took up space, and I gifted it out into the world. I love that you think you're gifting it. Something could still be very good and have lots of value, but it's not valuable to you. So pass that on. Other ways is, of course, we know we can be in gratitude. Gratitude raises our energy. And also, we know that I love the affirmations that you said this morning. And one of the affirmations is we release the ideas of sickness, of restriction, or it was about letting go. One of the way we heal, we don't have to go digging anything up in the past because it'll come. When we get in the flow of love, anything that it's blocking that love. And how do we know it's blocking it? We think about it day and night. We have dreams about it. It takes away our peace. When our mind is drifting off during the day, we find ourselves thinking about it, contemplating about it. How many of you have conversations in your mind with someone you're challenged with? And you're even thinking what they're going to say back to you and what you're going to say to them. We all do that. How many of us have a parent's voice that says, "Oh, you know what? I know you. This is what you always do. This is how you always act. No one's going to like you if you do that." We have to look at that because that is a block to love in us. And when we have a block of love, we are not fully living in the kingdom. We are not fully living the promised land. It's a land of milk and honey. Everything we need will come to us when we need it. And we have to trust and accept that. And so we have different ways that we can think about the we don't have to think about what's going to happen in the future. We just have to trust that when I clear this away, when I untether myself, when I free myself from my ego's enslavement, I can flow in my life much easier. And by flowing much easier, I am able to do what my purpose is. All of us have one single purpose that matters the most, and that is to extend love into the world. The way I extend love into the world is through gratitude, through generosity, through kindness, through compassion. I just heard this little blip thing with Gary Zukav, and he was saying, I used to enter the army. I was a man. I was macho. And he said, male energy has changed. It needs to be compassionate. And so think about that. If you're a male, we all have male and female energy. So my energy, male energy, has to turn to compassion. And so how can I offer compassion in the world? How can I volunteer to be of service to the world? How can I get rid of possessions that they don't work for me anymore, but they certainly will be a wonderful gift for someone else? How can I offer gratitude for the day? How can we talk about, I was asked when I first came on, what a miracle did you experience? And I want to say the ultimate is, it's not really a miracle. It's really the way life is supposed to be.